fight fans. So we gotta talk about the aftermath of Shakur Stevenson's performance. Now, first things first, we gotta put this all on the table. Shakur Stevenson had the worst performance in his professional career. He landed the least amount of punches in his professional career. He did leave his opponent to roughly around the same percentage of 14%. Landed on Shakur Stevenson according to CompuBox throughout his professional career, which is around the percentage where he keeps his opponents, an aggressively low percentage. And Edwin de los Santos landed only 40 punches throughout the entire fight, which is the lowest in CompuBox history. But the fight collectively was not the lowest. It's probably third lowest ever collectively between both fighters landing punches. So, was that Shakur Stevenson's best performance? Absolutely not. As we just mentioned, he should have done better. He should have tried to throw the left hand a little bit more, and he should have put together some combinations to create good separation between him and Edwin de los Santos. Horrible performance by Shakur Stevenson, a performance where he won. Clearly, I mean, I don't understand how people want the person who landed the least amount of punches in the history, in the 38-year history of CompuBox, to have won that fight. But, you know, I digress. He won, but he won because he just outsmarted him every time. He edged him out every time in every single round by outsmarting him slightly in every single round and never committing. So the test of a person who is really good to the point where they win in separation is when they can get to a point where they understand the opponent's rhythm, their opponent's flow, the opponent's tendencies, when they like to punch, when they don't like to punch, when they like to reset, when they like to engage, and take advantage of all of that data and then overwhelm that person, which is what Shakur Stevenson normally does, which leads me into the topic of this video. I have to say that beginning part because I think that the boxing community is too enamored with groupthink. There's too much, let's all be team this or let's all be team that. Right? I want, if you're going to say this thing, you're also going to say this thing, and this thing. And what do I mean by that? If you're going to say that Shakur Stevenson had a bad performance, you're also going to be part of the groupthink that says Shakur Stevenson should never fight Devin Haney, should never fight Tank after that performance. Shakur Stevenson is a boring fighter all the time because of that performance. You're going to be in that group think that's going to talk about Shakur Stevenson's performance in that vein. So the problem that I see from Shakur Stevenson's performance, more than just the performance itself, is the boxing community's ability or determination to consistently gaslight when it comes to boxing. It's incredible because it's easy to spot. It's easy to see the gaslighting. For example, when someone looks at Shakur Stevenson's recent performance and tells you that Shakur Stevenson is a boring fighter that runs, it makes no sense when you look at the last 3 performances before this one. You are essentially saying that this is the only performance that you've ever seen of Shakur Stevenson. But no, they'll gaslight one step further if you bring that up. They'll say, what about the Nakatila fight? He always does this because of this other one fight that I can point to. Because after the Nakatila fight and the Edwin de los Santos fight, you actually can't see him doing that. There's no other spots where he does that. Now, I would agree that there is some correlation between a fighter who has a good punching power And because not just punching power, he decimated Oscar Valdez, and he has punching power. But a fighter who has good punching power and can box. What ends up happening is, I think Shakur understands his limitations. He doesn't have the punching power of a De Los Santos or a Nakatila, but he knows that he can outbox them. And in a sparring session, that outboxing would be praised. Oh, that was smart. You edged them out. You kept yourself safe. That's smart. In a sparring session, that's fine. In a performance, where that's what you're trying to do with the fans, where you're trying to show an immense separation with judges that can be wishy-washy. And I mean, the scores were 115, 113 from one of the judges. That's essentially just one round away from it being a draw in the eyes of that judge. Judges could determine, oh, you know what? You box like that, I'm going to punish you. They've done it to Rigondeaux. He technically beat Casemiro, but because he boxed that way, they punished him and he lost the fight. So it's very dangerous. You want to create separation to at least get that advantage with the judges and also perform for the crowd. But I will agree that when there's a fighter that, you know, has technical abilities and power, Shakur tends to just want to outbox them in a razor thin kind of situation where he doesn't give them much, and then he just wins every round. I will agree that he does that. But when people say, oh, he always runs, you're looking at 2 fights out of all 20 of his fights, and you're saying that he always runs. That's gaslighting. And you know that you're gaslighting. Or maybe you don't, because the learning curve of boxing is so large that some people never move off of the surface level of understanding the sport, and then they just follow what the group says. Now, I know I'm probably hurting a lot of boxing fans, ego right now, because I'm revealing a lot of the truth of how they feel about the sport. They love it, they like it, they watch it, they don't really truly understand it, so they follow what somebody else tells them. But the gaslighting is the most annoying thing about the sport, in my opinion. I can be a Shakur Stevenson fan and say that he had a bad performance and be real about it and not create a false narrative behind that bad performance. He got exposed. How? How did he get exposed if nothing happened in the fight? What was the thing that exposed him? If anything, he showed that he'll just win under any circumstances, which is the opposite of being exposed. Is it fun to watch? No, but it doesn't expose him, but that's a narrative. Oh, he's been exposed. Because boxing community gaslights. Another thing that we're hearing. Oh, and you guys were saying Devin Haney was ducking Shakur. Now y'all see how dumb that was. Oh yeah, because when Devin Haney was deciding to move to 140, and is it a duck, is it not a duck, I don't know, but when he decided to move to 140, he was able to see into the future to see a fight that had not happened yet. This is how gaslighting works. Because before that, he was beating up his opponents. Between that and the Nakatila fight, he was beating up his opponents. And then, of course, because boxing has so much subjectivity, so much nuance, people would say stuff like, oh, yeah, but he did that to a Jamel Herring. But De Los Santos is not any better than a Jamel Herring if you think about it in ranking by ranking, because Jamel Herring was a world champion. Oh, he did that to an old Jamel Herring. Okay, he was a world champion. And guess what? He was a world champion that beat Carl Frampton. The same Carl Frampton that beat Leo Santa Cruz. The same Leo Santa Cruz that people praise Tank for knocking out with the uppercut while Tank was losing that fight. But they won't say, oh, but that's Leo Santa Cruz, man. He was no, they won't. They'll praise Tank for the knockout because it's gaslighting. That's the problem with the sport. It's not even the sport itself. It's the toxicity of the fans that bring all of this gaslighting to you all the time, making it hard to really understand what's going on. So they'll say stuff like that. Tank, he don't even deserve to fight Tank after that performance. Okay, but there's other performances. Why are you so focused on that performance only and acting as if that is the only fight he's ever had, when we know that he's had others? And you know he's had others. And you've seen the Jamel Herring fight. And you've seen the Oscar Valdez fight. You could try to say, oh, well, Oscar Valdez lost to Navarrete. Cool. Leo Santa Cruz lost to Carl Frampton. Jamel Herring beat Carl Frampton. Shakur Stevenson decimated Jamel Herring. Now what? The logical consistency does not exist with these boxing community members that gaslight. And this doesn't just go for the people who watch the sport and engage with the community. It's also from people who make content from the community. Yeah. They're probably the biggest proponents of gaslighting because what they say is the same arsenal that the community that wants to gaslight use to gaslight. The ironic thing is that they'll say stuff like, oh, the old media or the people who are presenting this information from the old school, they'll gaslight you. But me, I'm not gonna gaslight you. I'm gonna tell you the truth. And the ironic thing about that statement is it's a gaslighting statement, so that the next thing that comes out of their mouth is, even if it's a gaslighting statement that's about to come out of their mouth, they're prepping you to believe them about what they're saying. But the truth is, they have more of a vested interest than a Dan Raphael, than a Michael Benson, who's going to get clicks and views no matter what they say about the sport. They have more vested interest to keep you on team PBC or team Top Rank. They have more vested interest on keeping you in that lane because that's how they built their channel. We could grow slow here on Boxing Fanatico, but we are never going to pretend anything just so that we could navigate one slither of a community and grow that community in its potency. We're not going to do that. But that's how most people have grown their boxing channels and boxing social media. The truth is, the old media, the Don Raphaels, you'll see them be able to praise a fighter that they've given negative criticism to, and you'll see it all the time. They're gaslighting you less than the new media of the content creators that are consistently always pushing one narrative. If you always think Canelo Alvarez did the right thing and anybody from the PBC is doing the wrong thing, you a gaslighter. If you always think that Errol Spence is doing the right thing, but you think that Top Rank is doing the wrong thing, you a gaslighter. Because it don't work like that. No one is always doing the right thing and no one's always doing the wrong thing. If you're okay with Errol Spence being injured and that's why he needs the rematch, but you can't believe that Shakur Stevenson was injured, you're a gaslighter. Now, I hate when boxers use injury as an excuse. Hate it when Floyd used it, even against Jose Luis Castillo. Hate it when Shakur used it, even though he didn't use it, but he alluded to it. I still think he used it. My opinion of that fight, which is just my opinion, he didn't throw the left hand because he was worried about the counter. And then he used some, like, an excuse of his shoulder was hurting him or his hand was hurting him. But if you believe Spence, or the Spence theory that his ribs were hurt, but the Shakur being hurt, you don't believe that, you're gaslighting your community. Anyways, I just had to talk about that because that is probably the most biggest pet peeve when it comes to boxing. Boxing was so much better when I was younger, before the internet and social media took over, in my opinion, simply because the whole gaslighting situation just created pockets of fandom that always go one way, even if they know that they're BSing, or sometimes they don't, because like I said, they don't pass the surface level understanding. Some people just want to talk about boxing forever, and they just want to be able to talk about two people that never fight each other. They love that. There's a lot of people that low-key hated the fact that Terrence Crawford finally got the fight with Errol Spence, because whatever happened, like what ended up happening is Errol Spence got exposed in that situation. That's why you'll hear, oh, he should never talk about fighting Tank. Tank should never fight him, because that's what they want. They don't want them to actually fight. They just want to be able to say that Tank will beat him, but they don't want it to actually be put to the test. That's not real boxing. That's not being a real boxing fan. A real boxing fan wants to see the fights. Anyways, let's go ahead and end that the video here. Hopefully this video resonates with you guys. I always tell you, we're gonna keep it 100 all the time here. It's not gonna be about trying to trick you to believe something or so it's never gonna be like that here on Boxing Fanatico. We're always just gonna keep it straight with you. That's it. And we'll let you know we have favorite fighters. Of course we do. Of course we have favorite fighters, because that's would be gaslighting in and of itself to pretend that you don't. It's like saying I watch the NBA, but I don't have a favorite basketball team. I just watch it. No, you'll watch the finals even though your team isn't there because you love the sport. Sure, you love watching the sport, but you're going to have a favorite team. Same thing with boxing. You're going to have a favorite fighter. You're going to have favorite fighters. But that doesn't stop me from being honest when I present the information on the sport. Anyways, until the next one, guys. Had to rant real quick about the boxing community. Hopefully it gets cleaned up at one point, but I don't see that happening. All right, until the next one, guys. Peace.